Calling a human fragile isn't an insult. It's a prediction of your own immediate future, specifically the part where you wake up in medical wondering what dimension you just got kicked into. I didn't believe that until I called a 5 feet 2 inches human girl breakable, and she responded by breaking several of my assumptions, most of my pride, and possibly a few of my internal organs. So let me tell you about the day I learned that mocking a human's apparent fragility is like laughing at a plasma core because it looks small and contained. Spoiler alert, the energy release still sends you to the infirmary. My name is Vorn, head of security operations for Merchant Station Kepler 7, and I have worked in station security for 18 standard cycles. I have handled drunk Krellians who could bench press small vehicles, defused situations involving armed Vraxian mercenaries, and once physically removed a Thorian diplomat who refused to leave a restricted area. I am 8 feet tall, I have 4 arms, my species evolved natural armor plating across most of our vital areas, and I weigh approximately 450 pounds of muscle and attitude. Point is, I know how to handle physical confrontations. I know what makes someone dangerous, what separates trained fighters from civilians who think they're tough, what body language indicates genuine threat versus empty posturing. I have seen hundreds of species, thousands of individuals, and I can usually assess someone's combat capability within about 30 seconds of observation. Usually being the critical word in that sentence. The morning she arrived, I was reviewing security footage in my office, a cramped space overlooking the station's main commercial district. Standard day, standard operations, nothing unusual. Then my second-in-command, Crix, a Voxian with excellent instincts and annoying tendency to be right about things, knocked on my door with unusual urgency. "Sir, we have a situation developing in the commercial sector. Might want to handle this one personally." I pulled up the live feed on my display. Commercial sector, near the transit hub, a crowd had gathered in that way crowds do when something interesting or terrible is happening. In the center of that crowd, I could see a Braxian enforcer, one of the freelance security types that merchant ships hire when they need muscle. This particular Braxian, went by the name Thorg according to our database, stood roughly 7 feet tall, probably weighed 400 pounds, had natural weapons in the form of bone spikes along his forearms, and a reputation for violence that had gotten him banned from 3 different stations. Next to him, looking like someone had placed a child next to a boulder for scale comparison, stood a human female. Tiny, maybe 157 centimeters tall, thin build, wearing civilian clothes that looked worn but clean. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple style, brown skin, and an expression that I couldn't quite read from the camera angle. Most importantly, she was standing between Thorg and an elderly plenary female who appeared to be his target. "What's the situation?" I asked Crix, already moving toward the door. "Thorg is attempting to collect a debt from the plenary. Apparently she owes money to his employer. Standard strong-arm collection tactics. The human intervened about 2 minutes ago, placed herself between them, and has been preventing Thorg from reaching his target. Preventing how? Verbally. Physically. She's literally blocking him. Won't move." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Humans were new to the station, only been in galactic space for maybe 5 years, and most of what I knew about them came from brief interactions and basic biological data. They were small, averaging maybe 170 centimeters. They came from a standard gravity world, nothing special. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no particular physical advantages that made them notable. They were, by all available data, thoroughly average in every measurable category. They were also, according to every assessment I had read, fragile. Their bones broke relatively easily. Their skin tore from minor trauma. They had a single heart, single liver, minimal redundancy in their critical systems. A serious injury could kill them where other species would barely notice. Having one of them physically interpose herself between a Braxian enforcer and his target was essentially suicide by stupidity. "How long until I get there?" I asked, already running through the corridors. 3 minutes at your current pace. Tell patrol units to maintain perimeter but do not engage. I'll handle this directly. We need to extract the human before Thorg decides to go through her instead of around her. I arrived at the scene 2 minutes and 40 seconds later, breathing slightly hard but ready to intervene. The crowd had grown, probably 40 or 50 individuals from various species, all watching the confrontation with that mix of horror and fascination that sentient beings show when witnessing someone making catastrophically bad decisions. Thorg was speaking, his voice a low rumble that carried easily across the space. Last chance, little human. Move aside. This doesn't concern you. The old one owes money. I collect money. Simple business. You interfere, you become part of the business. Not good for your health. The human hadn't moved. She stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, no weapon visible, no aggressive posture. Just standing there, a physical barrier between violence and its intended target. She's elderly, the human said, her voice quiet but clear. She's scared. And I'm not moving. Then you're stupid, Thor growled. I will move you myself. You understand? I will hurt you. Badly. You are soft. Breakable. I am not. I understand that's what you think, the human replied. You're still not touching her. I pushed through the crowd, using my size and authority to create a path. Security. Everyone step back. Thorg, you know the regulations. Debt collection through intimidation is prohibited in commercial sectors. You want to file a legal claim, do it through proper channels. Thorg's attention shifted to me, his small eyes calculating. He knew who I was, knew I had authority to arrest him, knew that continuing this confrontation would result in him being removed from the station. Again. But he also knew that backing down in front of a crowd would damage his reputation, make him look weak, and that was apparently worse than legal consequences. This is private business, Vorn. Not station security concern. You're disturbing the peace, threatening a civilian, and about 30 seconds from being detained. That makes it my concern. Walk away. Now, he looked at me, then at the human, then back at me. Running calculations, weighing options. Finally, he stepped back slightly, hands raised in mock surrender. Fine. I leave. But you, he pointed at the human with one clawed finger. You made mistake today. Made yourself my business. You are fragile little thing. Easy to break. I remember your face. I'll try not to lose sleep over it, the human said dryly. Thorg turned and walked away, the crowd parting to let him through. Several of my security personnel followed at a discreet distance, making sure he actually left the commercial sector. I turned my attention to the human, who was now checking on the elderly plenary, speaking quietly with her in what sounded like decent but accented plenary dialect. You, I said, probably more harshly than necessary. That was incredibly stupid. Do you have any idea what a Braxian enforcer could have done to you? She looked up at me, and I got my first clear view of her face. Young, probably mid-20s in human years, with sharp features and eyes that held something I couldn't quite identify. Not fear, not defiance exactly, something calmer. More certain. Yes, she said simply. I know exactly what he could have done. That's why I made sure he didn't do it to her. Instead, he could have killed you. Easily. Braxians have bone spikes that can punch through most body armor. You're not wearing body armor. You're wearing a civilian jacket and what appears to be recreational pants, jeans, she corrected. They're called jeans. And yes, I'm aware of my clothing situation. This isn't funny. You put yourself at serious risk for someone you don't even know. I know she's elderly, scared, and was about to get hurt over a debt that probably isn't even legitimate. That's enough to know. The plenary was crying now, thanking the human in her native language, clutching the human's hand with her small three-fingered grip. The human comforted her gently, then helped her to a nearby bench, staying with her until family members arrived to take her somewhere safe. I watched this interaction, reassessing my initial judgment. The human wasn't stupid, exactly. Reckless, definitely. Possessing a grossly inflated sense of her own capabilities, absolutely. But not stupid. She understood the risk and chose to accept it anyway. That was either bravery or insanity, and in my experience, the line between them was basically non-existent. Once the plenary was safely with her family, the human turned back to me. I'm going to need to file a report about this incident, I said, pulling out my datapad. Name: Maya Reeves. Occupation: freelance cargo specialist. I work independent contracts, mostly loading and transport logistics. How long have you been on this station? 3 days. Just came in on a merchant vessel, staying while I look for my next contract. 3 days. She had been here 3 days and already made an enemy of one of the more dangerous individuals on the station. Ms. Reeves, I need you to understand something. Thorg is not going to forget this. Braxians have cultural honor codes that require them to address perceived insults. You embarrassed him in public, prevented him from completing his job, made him back down in front of witnesses. He will consider that a personal challenge. I figured as much, and that doesn't concern you. She shrugged, a gesture that seemed far too casual given the circumstances. He was going to hurt that woman. Someone needed to stop him. I was there, so I did. If that creates problems for me later, I'll handle them later by getting yourself killed. I didn't say I'd handle them poorly. I stared at her, trying to determine if she was genuinely this naive about her own vulnerability or if humans had some kind of cultural death wish I hadn't been briefed on. You weigh maybe 120 pounds. Thorg weighs over 400. You have no natural weapons. He has bone spikes that can impale you. You're soft-skinned, single-heart biology with minimal damage redundancy. He has reinforced skeletal structure and distributed vital organs. The physics alone make this matchup impossible. I appreciate the detailed breakdown of why I should be terrified, Maya said. Is there anything else you need for your report, or can I go? Where are you staying? Transient quarters, level 7, section K. I'm assigning a security patrol to your area. If Thorg approaches you again, contact station security immediately. Do not attempt to handle it yourself. Are we clear? Crystal clear, she said, but her tone suggested she had no intention of following those instructions. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd with that same unhurried pace she had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. I stood there, watching her go, feeling unsettled in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Crix appeared beside me, his Voxian features arranged in what I recognized as concern. Sir, that human is going to get herself killed, probably, I agreed. Make sure medical is on standby. We'll likely need them within the next 24 hours. I was wrong about the timeline. It took 8 hours, not 24. The call came in during evening cycle, right as I was finishing reports and looking forward to actually going off duty for once. Security alert, level 7, transient quarters, section K, physical altercation in progress. Medical en route, of course. Of course it was section K. Of course it involved the suicidally brave human who thought she could stand up to a Braxian enforcer through sheer determination. I grabbed my gear and ran, again, wondering when my job had become babysitting humans with no survival instincts. The transient quarters were essentially small residential pods for short-term station visitors, cramped spaces barely large enough for a bed, small bathroom, and storage locker. The corridors connecting them were narrow, designed for efficiency rather than comfort, with low ceilings that made larger species feel claustrophobic. I arrived to find a crowd gathered outside one of the pods, security personnel trying to establish a perimeter, and sounds of violence coming from inside that made my security instincts scream warnings. Crashing, impacts, what sounded like breaking furniture. Situation, I barked at the nearest officer, a young Krellian named Voss. The Braxian, Thorg, forced entry into the humans' quarters approximately 4 minutes ago. We detected the breach immediately, but by the time we arrived, they were already engaged. We can hear fighting but can't get a clear visual. Door was damaged during initial breach. Is the human alive? Unknown, sir. Medical is standing by, but we haven't been able to establish contact with either party. Another crash from inside, followed by what sounded distinctly like a Braxian pain roar. That was unexpected. I moved to the doorway, which was indeed damaged, the locking mechanism completely destroyed. Through the opening, I could see movement, shapes struggling in the confined space, but details were impossible to make out. Thorg, I called out. Station security. Cease hostile action immediately and exit the premises. You are in violation of multiple station regulations. The response was another roar, this one definitely pain rather than anger, followed by more crashing. Something was thrown against the wall hard enough to crack the reinforced polymer. We need to breach, I told my team. Assume hostile combatant, protect the human if she's still alive, subdue Thorg by any means necessary. Go. We moved in, 3 security officers plus myself, weapons drawn, prepared for the worst. What we found made absolutely no sense according to everything I knew about physics, biology, and basic reality. Thorg was on the floor. Not standing over a broken human body like I had expected. On the floor, bleeding from multiple wounds, one arm bent at an angle that suggested broken bones, gasping for air like he couldn't quite remember how breathing worked. And Maya Reeves stood over him, breathing hard, knuckles bloody, her clothing torn, several visible injuries including what looked like a nasty cut across her shoulder, but very much alive, conscious, and apparently victorious. "What?" I said, because my brain couldn't form more complex sentences while processing this scene. "Station security," Maya said, as if this was perfectly normal. Good timing. This one broke into my quarters and attempted assault. I defended myself. "I assume there are regulations about that, I started, then stopped. I tried again. "How?" "Physics, biology, and basic combat training," she said, echoing my earlier words back at me with what might have been humor if the situation wasn't so completely insane. Plus leverage, technique, and his overconfidence. My security team was staring. One of them, Voss, was recording everything on his helmet camera with an expression that suggested he was questioning reality. Thorg groaned from the floor, tried to sit up, and Maya casually planted her foot on his chest. "Stay down. You've had enough, but I gestured helplessly at her. "You're fragile. Humans are fragile. That's established biological fact. Fragile compared to what?" Maya asked. "Yeah, I break easier than him. My bones are lighter, my skin tears more easily, I don't have redundant organs. But I'm not actually fragile. I'm efficient. My species spent millions of years learning how to take down prey animals bigger and stronger than us using nothing but endurance, intelligence, and really aggressive persistence." She pressed her foot down slightly and Thorg stopped trying to rise. He thought size and strength were all that mattered. He fought like his physical advantages would automatically win. I fought like someone who studied martial arts for 15 years and knows exactly where and how to hurt someone regardless of size differential. "You have trained for 15 years. Crix asked, appearing in the doorway behind me. "Since I was 8. Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, plus various weapons systems. Humans don't have natural weapons, so we make our entire body into a weapon. Every joint, every leverage point, every vulnerable target, we learn to exploit all of it." She looked down at Thorg. "He's bigger and stronger, sure. But he's never fought someone who spent over a decade learning how to make those advantages irrelevant. Size doesn't matter when someone hyperextends your elbow, or targets your knee joints, or uses your own momentum to throw you into walls repeatedly." "You threw him?" I asked, staring at the size difference. "The physics shouldn't allow for that." "Leverage," she said again. "And his overconfidence. He came at me expecting easy victory, which made him predictable, which made him vulnerable. Once I got inside his guard, his reach advantage became a liability." Medical personnel pushed past me, moving to treat both Thorg and Maya. She stepped back, allowing them to work, finally showing signs of fatigue as the adrenaline presumably started wearing off. "Ms. Reeves," I said carefully. "You need medical attention as well, I know. I can wait until they stabilize him. You're bleeding, surface wounds mostly." "I'll survive." She looked at me directly. Unlike what would have happened if I hadn't been able to defend myself. Fair point. Very fair point. If she hadn't been capable of exactly what she just demonstrated, I would currently be standing over her corpse instead of Thorg's broken body. The medical team stabilized Thorg enough for transport, loading him onto a stretcher with restraints because apparently even injured Braxians were considered dangerous. As they carried him out, he looked at Maya with something between respect and terror. "You fight like demon," he rasped. "Like nightmare creature from Death World." "What are you?" "Human," Maya said simply. "From Earth. And yeah, it's a death world. Everything there tries to kill you, so we learn to kill back." Efficiently, they took him away, and suddenly the small quarters felt even more cramped with all of us squeezed inside. I looked around, taking in the damage. Broken furniture, cracked walls, blood on multiple surfaces, evidence of a fight that had been brief but incredibly violent. "I'm going to need extremely detailed reports about this incident," I said. "From everyone. But first, Ms. Reeves, medical. Now." "Not optional," she nodded, finally allowing exhaustion to show. "Fair enough. Do I need to worry about legal consequences for defending myself? You were attacked in your own quarters by someone with clear hostile intent. That's textbook self-defense. You're not in trouble, I paused. Although I have questions about why you didn't call for security immediately when he breached your door, no time. He was already inside and attacking. I dealt with the immediate threat, then security arrived. Standard protocols for active danger situations. Where did you learn standard protocols for active danger situations? Earth. We have mandatory safety training for most employment sectors, plus I took additional self-defense courses that covered threat response procedures. Pretty common where I'm from, pretty common, I repeated flatly. Humans commonly train for scenarios involving physical assault in confined spaces. I mean, yeah. Earth has high crime rates in some areas, plus natural predators, plus each other. We tend to prepare for worst-case scenarios because worst-case scenarios happen pretty regularly. She winced as a medic began treating her shoulder wound. This is nothing compared to some situations I've dealt with back home. I decided I needed to completely revise every assumption I had ever made about humans, their capabilities, and their apparent fragility. Later, after Maya had been treated for her injuries, which turned out to be mostly minor despite looking dramatic, after Thorg had been secured in medical detention facing multiple charges, after approximately 17 different reports had been filed, I found myself back in my office with Crix, reviewing the helmet camera footage of the aftermath. You know what bothers me most about this? Crix said, watching the video for the third time. What? We had complete biological data on humans. Height, weight, bone density, cardiovascular capacity, all of it. Everything suggested they were average at best, fragile at worst. Nothing in any of the data indicated they were capable of this level of combat effectiveness because we measured the wrong things, I said, finally understanding. We measured physical attributes in isolation. We didn't measure skill, training, technique, or that apparently insane determination to fight regardless of physical disadvantages. So how do we update our threat assessments? Crix asked. Do we just mark all humans as potentially dangerous? I think we mark them as unpredictable until proven otherwise. And maybe stop assuming that fragile means helpless, my communicator chirped. Security alert, commercial sector again, different location. What now? I pulled up the alert details and felt a headache forming before I even finished reading. Maya Reeves was involved in another altercation, this time defending a group of young plenary from harassment by drunk merchant sailors. She had apparently put 2 of them in compliance holds and was calmly waiting for security while they struggled ineffectively against her grip. She's been here 4 days, I said to Crix. 4 days and she's already involved in 3 separate security incidents. To be fair, she didn't start any of them. She just finished them. That's not actually better. I headed out again, wondering if I should just assign someone to follow Maya around full-time to clean up the chaos that apparently followed her everywhere. When I arrived at the commercial sector, the scene was almost comedy. 2 large merchant sailors, both species significantly bigger than Maya, were face down on the deck with their arms twisted behind their backs in holds that looked professionally applied. Maya sat casually on one of them, maintaining the lock with minimal effort while checking something on her personal data device. Ms. Reeves, I said, fighting the urge to laugh at the absurdity. We really need to stop meeting like this. I agree completely, she said. Unfortunately, these 2 decided that harassing teenagers was acceptable behavior. I corrected that misunderstanding. The young plenary she had apparently been defending were clustered nearby, looking at Maya with expressions of awe and gratitude. One of them, barely adolescent, approached cautiously. Thank you, the youngster said in heavily accented standard. You very brave. Very strong, just doing what anyone should do, Maya said gently. You all okay? They didn't hurt you. They confirmed they were unharmed, and I had my security team take custody of the drunk sailors who were absolutely not trying to struggle anymore. Maya released them carefully, stepped back, and immediately the professional combat-ready persona dropped away, replaced by someone who looked tired and maybe a little overwhelmed. Ms. Reeves, can we talk privately? I asked. She nodded, and we moved to a quieter section of the commercial district, away from the crowd that had inevitably gathered. Look, she said before I could speak. I know this looks bad. I'm not trying to cause problems or undermine station security. But I can't just stand by when people are getting hurt or threatened. That's not how I'm built. I'm beginning to understand that. But you need to understand something too. This station has security personnel for a reason. We're trained, equipped, and authorized to handle these situations. You're a civilian cargo specialist who apparently has more combat training than most of my security team, but you're still not official, I know. And normally I'd call security and let them handle it. But both times today, the situations were immediate. Active threats happening in front of me. By the time security arrived, someone would have been hurt. I had the capability to prevent that, so I did. She met my eyes. Would you prefer I stand aside and let people get hurt while waiting for official response? No, I admitted. But I'd prefer you not put yourself at risk like this. Despite your obvious skills, you're still vulnerable. You got lucky today, skill, not luck, she corrected. And I'm always vulnerable. That's the human condition. We're soft, we break easily, we have minimal natural defenses. So we train, we learn, we practice until skill compensates for physical limitations. It's what we do. How common is this? Humans with your level of training. More common than you'd think. Earth has thousands of martial arts schools, military training programs, self-defense courses. Millions of people study combat techniques as sport, fitness, or practical skills. I'm not exceptional by human standards. I'm just someone who took it seriously. That was a disturbing thought. If Maya wasn't exceptional, if there were millions of humans with similar capabilities, then every threat assessment we had about human civilians was catastrophically wrong. I need to file reports about today's incidents. All of them, I understand, and I'm putting a note in your file. If you're going to be on this station, if you're going to keep intervening in situations, I'd rather have you working with security than around us. Interested in a consulting position? She blinked, surprised. Consulting on what? Combat training. Threat response. Human capabilities and limitations. Clearly we need better education about your species, and you're a walking demonstration of everything we got wrong in our assessments. I'm a cargo specialist. You're also the person who put a Braxian enforcer in medical detention and disarmed 2 drunk sailors without breaking a sweat. Those skills are wasted on cargo logistics. Maya considered this, and I could see her working through the implications. Part-time. I still need to work actual contracts to pay for station fees. Part-time works. We'll formalize it later, but for now, if you're going to be here, at least let me know where you're going so I can have medical on standby. She laughed at that, genuine amusement breaking through her serious expression. Deal. Try not to mock any more humans for being fragile. We don't take it well, believe me. I've learned that lesson. She left, and I returned to my office to begin the mountain of paperwork this day had generated. Crix was waiting, reviewing more footage from various security cameras. So you're hiring her, he said. Not a question, a statement, unless you have a better solution for the fact that humans are apparently much more dangerous than we realized and we need someone to teach us what we're dealing with. No argument here. Though I should mention, I did some research while you were gone. He pulled up a file on the display. Earth, human homeworld. Classification on our databases shows Class 10 Death World. I felt my secondary heart skip a beat. Class 10 was serious. That meant a planet where survival required extreme adaptation, where life itself was constant danger, where evolution produced species that could handle nearly impossible conditions. How did we miss that? It's new data, just updated in the last cycle. Initial survey teams classified Earth as Class 6, moderately hazardous. New information from extended observation raised that classification significantly. Apparently Earth has climate instability, tectonic volatility, aggressive megafauna, microscopic pathogens, and humans themselves as primary dangers. Humans themselves. They list as one of the planet's major hazards. Humans prey on each other through violence, manipulation, and organized warfare. They've developed thousands of ways to harm their own species, everything from primitive physical combat to weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization. Crix looked at me significantly. The report recommends caution when dealing with humans in any capacity, particularly ones with military or combat training. That information would have been useful earlier today, agreed. Though to be fair, Maya did try to warn you. You called her fragile, she demonstrated otherwise. That's pretty clear communication. He wasn't wrong. I had made assumptions based on physical appearance and basic biological data, never considering that a species from a death world might develop capabilities that compensated for physical limitations. Never thought that fragile didn't mean weak, that vulnerability could coexist with lethal effectiveness. Maya Reeves had taught me that lesson personally, and I suspected I wouldn't be the last to learn it. Over the next several weeks, Maya became something of a fixture around station security. She consulted on human behavioral patterns, helped update our threat assessment protocols, and occasionally assisted with situations involving other humans where cultural understanding was crucial. She also continued to attract trouble like a gravity well, intervening in at least 6 more incidents ranging from domestic disputes to attempted muggings. Each time, she handled situations with efficiency that made my trained security personnel look clumsy, and each time she did it while being objectively, measurably more fragile than everyone she fought. I learned a lot during those weeks. Learned that humans trained themselves extensively specifically because they were vulnerable, turning weakness into motivation rather than accepting it as limitation. Learned that combat effectiveness wasn't about size or strength but about skill, determination, and willingness to accept pain in pursuit of objectives. Learned that fragile just meant you broke easier, not that you couldn't fight, couldn't win, couldn't be absolutely terrifying when properly motivated. Mostly I learned that mocking a human's apparent fragility was a really good way to regain consciousness in the infirmary, wondering what happened and how something so small could hit so hard. I learned that lesson personally, even if I was witnessing rather than experiencing the results. Thorg learned it more directly. He spent 2 weeks in medical detention, another month in legal detention, and was eventually banned from the station permanently. Last I heard, he was telling stories about the demon from the death world who fought with impossible skill and terrifying precision. Good. He could spread that warning to others. Maybe it would save some lives, both human and non-human, if people understood that fragile didn't equal helpless. My name is Vorn, head of security operations for Merchant Station Kepler 7, and I made the mistake of assuming a human was fragile, breakable, easily hurt. She proved me wrong without ever needing to fight me directly, just by demonstrating exactly what a determined human could accomplish when motivated by protecting others. I regained consciousness, metaphorically at least, with a completely revised understanding of humans, their capabilities, and the danger of judging anyone by appearance alone. And now I tell this story to every new security officer who joins my team. I show them the footage of Maya Reeves defending herself against a Braxian enforcer twice her size. I explain exactly why calling a human fragile is technically accurate but functionally meaningless, because fragility doesn't stop them from fighting, doesn't prevent them from winning, doesn't make them safe to dismiss. I end every briefing the same way Maya ended our first real conversation. Humans break easier than most species, but they don't break easy. There's a difference, and understanding that difference might save your life someday. Or at least save you the embarrassment of underestimating someone small, soft, and absolutely lethal when circumstances require it. Trust me on this. I learned it the easy way, just by watching. The hard way involves waking up in medical wondering what happened. Don't take the hard way. It hurts, even when you're just watching it happen to someone else.